Hello, Tony Burke here with a revision screencast for Construction Technology 1 for students taking the exam in May 2014. This has been prepared on the 2nd of April 2014. Firstly, just to remind you of the arrangements, which I think most people will already be aware of, but the exam is scheduled to take place on Thursday the 8th of May at 10 o'clock. It's a 3-hour exam, so it will go on until 1 o'clock. We do always advise students to keep checking for any changes to the arrangements right up until the day of the exam. It is sometimes necessary to make adjustments to the exam timetable, so you should just keep checking the timetable just to make sure that you're confident of the arrangements. The location is currently set for 2 rooms, MG14 and MG28, and students are normally allocated to a room alphabetically by their surname. So a poster will be put up somewhere indicating I don't know, surnames A to M or something in one room and N to Z in the other, but you need to actually check that to make sure you're absolutely certain of the arrangements. As far as the format of the exam is concerned, I have put an example paper from last year up on Blackboard, so you can have a look at the overall format and layout of the exam. But essentially the paper is divided into 3 sections. Section A deals with Adam's material covering site surveying and setting out. There's 3 questions in that section, and you're expected to attempt 2 of them. Section B deals with the material that myself and John Begg covered, essentially covering structure and fabric of residential buildings. There are 32 multiple choice questions in that section, and you're expected to attempt all of those. In section C, this covers Colin's section, dealing primarily with environmental design and building services. Again, there are 3 questions in that section, and you're expected to attempt 2 of them. Looking then at section A, Adam's section, as I said, there are 3 questions here, and you'll be required to attempt 2 of them, and each of the 2 questions that you answer, you can be awarded a maximum of 17 marks. There are 34 marks available in section A. The topics that will be covered in this section of the exam are exactly as you would expect, really. All the areas that Adam dealt with, using a level, both the setting up of the level, the booking of your readings, and the subsequent calculation of the reduced levels. Secondly, aspects of coordinates, both rectangular and polar coordinates, and the associated measurement of angles using a theodolite, and of course understanding how to use that surveying equipment. Now, Adam has very helpfully compiled 3 separate screencasts going over some of the revision topics, and he's put those on Blackboard, and they are now available, so you're urged to view Adam's screencasts as the basis for your revision. So for Adam's section then, you would need to refresh your memory of the topics by going over all of the lecture material, looking at the seminar exercises that were conducted during those first sort of 6 weeks of the module, the seminar session notes, the texts that were referred to in the module handbook, and of course, as I just mentioned, the screencasts which have been uploaded to Blackboard. And don't overlook the experience that you got going on the Harrow field trip, all of the booking and the subsequent calculation and completing that first piece of coursework, which should have given you some good preparation for understanding the surveying and setting out aspects of the module. In section B, the section dealt with by myself and John, 32 multiple choice questions, essentially relating to the structure and fabric of buildings, but also some of the associated aspects of performance requirements, building regulations, and health and safety. So you're required to attempt all of the questions in this section, and you'll get 1 mark for each correct answer. So there are a total of 32 marks available in section B. The topics that we covered, again, not really any surprises here. You need to understand performance requirements and the associated building regulations which support the performance requirements. John dealt with site investigations, soil investigations, the associated site clearances, scaffolding, the safety aspects of scaffolding, construction design and management regulations, and so on. We spent quite a bit of time looking at foundation design and construction, the factors which impact on foundation selection, different types of foundation ranging from traditional strip, deep strip, trench fill, pile foundations, raft foundations, and so on. Also looking at ground floors, both solid ground floors, suspended timber ground floors, beam and block floors, external wall construction ranging from traditional solid external walls through to the development of cavity walls, and in particular the provision we need to make for thermal insulation, different approaches to achieving the thermal requirements of the building regulations, looking at details around openings such as the heads of openings, lintel details, jamb details, sill details, how we accommodate windows and doors in our external walls and what form those windows and doors can take, upper floor construction, suspended timber upper floors, again beam and block upper floors, and some modern approaches to the provision of upper floors using more sort of engineering based solutions, the associated stairs that we need to get to those upper floors, so some of the common details for stair construction, and finally roofs, both the structure and the covering of roofs, including both pitched roofs and flat roofs. So all the topics really that we dealt with throughout the middle section of the module. I've been showing you examples of multiple choice questions throughout the module, but just to remind you of this style of question, let's have a look at a few simple examples. Here's a question which relates to the required depth of a strip foundation. You're presented with 4 factors and you have to decide which 2 of those factors are relevant in determining the required depth. So number 1, the likely effect of moisture in the subsoil. That is a relevant factor. Number 2, the proposed mix of concrete to be used in the foundation. That's not a relevant factor. Number 3, whether the foundation will be excavated by hand or by machine is not relevant. And finally, the effect of frost action. That is a relevant factor. So 1 and 4 are the relevant factors, so the correct answer to this question then is C. Another example, in this case you're presented with 2 statements, both of which relate to an illustration. The illustration shows a deep strip or trench fill foundation, and you're asked to consider whether the statements are true or false. The first statement, this type of foundation is commonly used in areas affected by seasonal changes in the volume of soil. That is true. It's very common to use a deep strip foundation in such situations. So number 1 is true. Secondly, this type of foundation does not require the excavation of working space for bricklayers. Again, that's true because all you need to do is actually excavate a trench of the required width and fill it to just below ground level with concrete. So both statements are true, so the answer again is C. Third question, this one shows an illustration again of a cavity wall with a clear cavity. Again, 2 statements. Number 1, when cavity walls were first introduced, the purpose of the cavity was to prevent moisture ingress. That's absolutely true. Secondly, the inner leaf of blockwork is the principal load-bearing leaf of the wall. Again, that also is true. So both statements are true, so you need to look through the list and you'll see that the correct answer in this case would be B. And the last illustration, or the last example, again relates to an illustration. It shows a form of upper floor construction, and you're simply asked which of the following 4 options best describes the system. And looking through the options, it shouldn't be too difficult to realise that the correct answer in this case is D, that it's a system of composite construction using softwood timber flanges connected by galvanised pressed steel webs. So as I say, you should be fairly familiar with the format of the questions. You've essentially got 32 of those style of questions. To see more examples, have a look at the example paper that I put on Blackboard. Now, when you're answering your questions, you will find at the back of the examination paper a sheet that looks like this, and in each of the questions you have to provide a simple response, either A, B, C or D. So to complete this sheet, you must first of all enter your student registration number in the box, just your number, not your name, because the papers are marked anonymously, and then to answer each of the questions you simply circle the correct answer. So whatever you think the answer is, you circle the relevant letter. If you make a mistake or you change your mind, then all you need to do is cross out the answer you've given and replace it with an alternative. But you must make it absolutely clear which option you are going for. If you circle two options, your answer will simply be ignored and you'll get 0. Okay, let's briefly look at section C then, which was Colin's section. Here there are 3 questions related to environmental design and building services, and again you're required to answer 2. So again you'll get 17 marks maximum for each answer, so 34 marks available. The topics covered in section C, essentially, as you've covered these fairly recently in the last few months, so it should be fairly fresh in your mind, but essentially heat loss, particularly fabric heat loss, is based on U values for the individual elements of the wall and the impact of thermal bridges. You need to understand U values, so U values are arrived at by inverting the total resistance, where resistance is calculated by dividing the thickness of the element of the wall or the form of construction by the conductivity of the material used. You need to understand the impact of adjusting insulation thicknesses. You also need to understand the importance of thermal bridges. We spent quite a lot of time looking at calculating Y values and indeed calculating area weighted U values. So you need to go over that aspect of the module. And you also need to remind yourself of the coverage of hot and cold water supply and indeed drainage, so both direct and indirect hot and cold water supply, and you spent some time looking at sustainable urban drainage systems with Colin. So those are the main areas for part C. Finally, just a few general points to consider. How much time should you spend on each section of the exam? Well, you need to think about this in terms of the marks available for each section and the marks available for each individual question that you're answering. If you allow a little bit of time at the beginning to read over the paper and some time at the end to read over your questions, let's just say for argument's sake that you allow 8 minutes at the beginning and a further 8 minutes at the end. Let's say that you allow a maximum of 2 minutes to answer each multiple choice question. That's 32 questions at 2 minutes each. That's 64 minutes in total. That should leave you a total of 100 minutes. That equals 25 minutes per question in section A and 25 in section C. Now obviously it's up to you. You need to make your adjustments accordingly, but that might just provide you with a very, very rough guide. So how much can you write in that 25 minutes? Well, I would say a fair bit. You should be looking at perhaps 2 to 3 sides for those longer questions. Certainly more than just a few lines. You shouldn't just be writing a few lines in response to those questions. And just a final point: how many marks do you get for writing out the question? Well, the answer to that is a big fat 0. You get absolutely no marks for writing out the question. The questions are known to us, so you don't need to write them out. So that's really all I wanted to cover in this screencast. I would remind you that there is an additional screencast providing you with some general revision advice, but I hope you found that useful, so I'm going to sign off here.